Hey guys, Mystellianne here, and today I'm bringing you guys a Tellarknights slash Brilliant Fusion, I like to call them Billion Tellers, as you can see right here, deck profile. So I know it's a little late for a Tellarknight deck since like Pepe is at full strength and it's not exactly like the best type of deck right now, but I'd say it's still a solid like tier 2, 1.5, somewhere around there. It can still compete with the meta relatively well, especially with the addition of new cards like Infinity and stuff like that. The deck really does still have a fighting chance. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with 3 copies of Deneb. Obviously, you're always going to be playing 3 copies of this card unless it, for some reason, gets limited. It's just, you know, the search of the deck, the Stratos, adds whatever you need, gets your combos going. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory there. 3 copies of Altair. If you don't know what it does, it special summons a Tellarknight from your graveyard. So it basically is one of your combo setters. It's your second best Tellarknight. One of your basic combos is Vega, who special summons one from hand, specials Altair from hand, who specials Deneb. Deneb searches a second copy of Altair, you make Trigger, and then you can do whatever the heck you want from there. So yeah, Altair is your standard search off of Deneb, unless you're doing some sort of like specialized combo with like Vega or something. Then we're moving on to 2 copies of Vega. A lot of people only play Vega at 1, but I really like Vega. I've liked it since it was released last August. It's just another combo setter. It allows you to make those monsters that need 3 level 4s, like Deltaros or Triver, or where is it? Rongominiad, Ptolemaeus, stuff like that. Although these 2 don't necessarily need the level 4s. However, you know, it's nice to have multiple ones because of their effects. We're playing a single copy of Uruk-hai. A lot of people like to play 3 or 2 of this, but the reason I'm not playing it at 2 or 3 is because the main purpose of it is to send a Tellarknight from your deck to the graveyard. You can load up your graveyard for stuff like Call of the Haunted. However, we have a few cards that do that already, for example, Brilliant Fusion. And then, of course, Uruk-hai itself. So we're basically playing 4 copies of Uruk-hai. I'll explain the mechanics of Brilliant Fusion and why it helps the deck later, but that's the main reason that we're only playing 1. Now we're moving on to 2 copies of Maxi, because it's just a great card. Even though this deck is famous for its consistency, it's always nice to get some extra draws so you can, you know, try to get some other combos that you can get in. Lastly, for the monsters, we're moving on to Gem Knight Garnet. Obviously, you know, you have played Brilliant Fusion, so you have to use Garnet or another Gem Knight, but whatever. Garnet seems to be the popular one. If anyone seems to be questioning why I'm playing 2 Garnet and 3 Brilliant Fusion, the theory is, since the meta games really don't last too long right now, you probably won't be drawing all 3 copies of your Brilliant Fusion. At most, you'll probably draw 2, and since you need to send a Gem Knight, 2 Garnet seems to be just fine, so that way you can fit other cards that are more necessary into your build. Then for the spells, we're moving on to 3 copies of Brilliant Fusion. If you guys don't know what it does, it special summons a Gem Knight Fusion monster from your extra deck, using fusion monsters from your deck. The rest of the stuff is pretty much irrelevant unless you're, I don't know, using it for some sort of OTK or something. But you're mainly using it to go into Gem Knight Strathknight, which needs a Gem Knight monster, which is your Garnet, and a light monster, which will mostly be Deneb, so that you can grab it off of Altair or Call the Haunted. Brilliant Fusion, oh, and also Strathknight lets you normal summon an extra time, so Tellarknights live and die by their normal summons, so it gives you the extra chance if they happen to warning it, or you can just do some more combos. So the main reason why Brilliant Fusion is such an amazing card in this deck, or why it's such a great addition to such a pretty good archetype already, is because it loads up your graveyard with Denebs, so that they can be brought back with Call the Haunted or Instant Fusion or whatever. It just lets you extend your plays so much further and lets you get to those plays quicker, because sometimes, you know, if you happen to brick and not draw any monsters, that can be a pretty bad hand for you, especially if you're not drawing enough cards to help you stall out until you can. Brilliant Fusion just speeds up that process while not forcing you to play not as many traps. So next we're moving on to 2 copies, my bad, of Instant Fusion. Of course, we all know Instant Fusion special summons Norden. Norden brings back whichever one of these you want, then you make whatever rank 4 you need. If you guys are wondering why I'm only playing 1 copy of Norden and 2 copies of Instant Fusion, again, the same concept applies here. You're only really going to be drawing 1 Instant Fusion. The times that you draw 2, you probably won't be needing it, or you can just discard the second one for Brilliant Fusion or whatever it may be, but chances are you're probably only going to be resolving 1 Norden. Next we have a single copy of Reinforcing the Army. Of course, this card would be at 3. I mean, this card would be played at 3 if it was at 3, but of course, it's at 1, so we're playing it at what we have it. You know, it adds whatever you need, Deneb, Altair, Vega, whichever one you may need, sometimes Unukaha, whichever. Then we're playing 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Even though the deck is known for its consistency, you still want to get to those combo pieces as fast as possible without sacrificing the amount of traps that you're playing. Because if you're playing more monsters to be able to draw them faster, you probably need to cut down on the traps. But playing Upstart allows you to keep the number of traps to a significant amount while still conserving the low monster count, so you can maximize the traps. The 1,000 life points that your opponent gains isn't really that big of a deal, because this deck is not meant to OZK. It's just meant for to grind them out eventually. So yeah, that's what Upstart Goblin's for. We're playing 2 copies of Twin Twister. Now I'm not exactly sure if the ratio for this one is exactly right, but I'm keeping it at 2 for now because this card is such a blowout against us like Pendulums. Completely shuts down their skills, and if they happen to have that Solemn Strike, you can just get rid of that before it even happens, because of course the Tellarknights live and die by their summons. Also, it's another discard fodder for Deneb, Vega, whichever one you may need to get to the graveyard at the time. Or if you draw Garnet and you don't have anything to do with it, you can just discard it for Twin Twisters. Regeki is pretty much an obvious choice. You know, it's just a blowout for your opponent. Then we're moving on to the traps. We have 3 copies of Stellar Nova Alpha. I think this card is just such a blowout against your opponent. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice today, or the way I speak. I have a little lisp or something today. My bad. So it basically negates pretty much anything for the cost of 1 Tellarknight, and it lets you draw a card. So it's really good, especially if you have a Call the Haunted set and you have the Tellarknight. For example, if you have Deneb and you have a Call the Haunted set, you know, obviously you just do whatever you want, negate whatever your opponent's gonna do. Then in the end phase, Call the Haunted back the Deneb, search Shelter, start your plays next turn. And you know, it's just great. I don't even know what else to say about it. Then we're moving on to 3 copies of Call the Haunted. Pretty self-explanatory. All these so Tellarknights live and die by their summons. They're not just when they're normal summon, but any type of summon. So special summoning them from the graveyard obviously triggers their effects and gets their combos going again. Then we're moving on to 2 copies of Phoenix Chain. Now originally when I was building this deck, I had put it at 3, but I realized that a lot of cards, for example Magic Specters, you know, can't target them. So targeting isn't as strong as it was. And for example, cards like Monarchs that are coming out tomorrow, or as the time I recorded this, with March can't be targeted. So Phoenix Chain is not going to be as good, so I'm bumping it down to 2. But it's still a great card because it negates their effects and stuff like that. Then we have 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Oh my god, this card is such a blowout. I'm really glad this card came out. If you guys don't know what it does, because it's relatively new, when a monster is special summoned or a monster effect is activated, you pay 1,500 life points and negate the summoner activation, and if you do, destroy it. So this card is just really great. It's like a better warning to me. I really don't know what else to say about it other than it's just a great blowout card to use against your opponent. Then we have 1 copy of Bottomless Trap Hole, coupled with 2 copies of Time Space Trap Hole. I'm grouping these together because they're what you use Rafflesia for, which we'll get into later. Bottomless is pretty obvious. Time Space Trap Hole has become a new pick for the meta. What it does is basically when your opponent special summons a monster from the hand or extra deck, shuffle those monsters into the deck so it castells them, and you lose 1,000 life points for each return monster. So with Pendulums, you're obviously going to be special summoning from both the hand and the extra deck, so it's a great card to shut them down and to stop their plays that turn. And it's great that you can just use it off of Rafflesia, which again we'll get into later. And then finally, to round off the main deck, we have 1 copy of Vanity's Emptiness. Obviously, you know, it's a floodgate. I mean, once you have your combos going and you have your established board, you just have your vanities, and you basically lock your opponent out of doing anything once you've brought up that much advantage that you just basically win the game. Great card. Then we're moving on to the extra deck. We have a single copy of Triver. This card was originally at 2 before Breaker's Shadow came out, but with a tight extra deck space with Ptolemaeus, Nova, Infinity, and all that stuff, and with the new Seraphinite comboed with Brilliant Fusion, that takes a bit of space out. So a lot of the time you won't be going into Triver immediately anymore to try and return all cards your opponent controls and stuff like that. A lot of the times you'll be going to Ptolemaeus, Nova, and Infinity. So I didn't feel like 2 copies of Triver was necessary anymore. But you never know. I mean, there will be those times, but I feel like more times I feel like more times you'd need Infinity than you'd need Triver. So I just feel like this card's better at 1. Then we have one single copy of Deltaros. Deltaros is just a great card in general. An effect that a lot of people look over is that while this card has Exceed material, your opponent cannot activate cards or effect when you normal summon a monster. So that means you can't bottomless it, they can't warning it, whatever it may be. And it's also notable that they can't do it when this card is summoned. So it's a notable effect. I'm not sure how often it would come into play, but I guess it's just worth noting. And then of course, it's just a pretty good card in general. We have a single copy of Diamond. It's just a great card. It was even better when Shadows were a big thing, but now that they're not anymore, it's an okay card. It could be just another thing you attach to Ptolemaios. You could use it against Cosmos, their big ships and stuff, whatever it may be. And yeah, just a pretty good card. Then we have Dweller. I feel like it's a pretty obvious choice. A lot of effects activate in the graveyard, so Abyss Dweller just prevents that from happening. Then we have Castell, pretty obvious, shuffle something into the deck, pretty self-explanatory, don't know what else to say. We have an Emerald. Now, I was considering cutting Emerald because a lot of the times when I've been using it, I feel like I just was relying on the draw from Emerald too much, and I felt like the deck needed something else instead of just the draw from Emerald, because if you drew bad from it, then you're basically going to lose. If you're put into that situation where you just have the Emerald. So I was considering cutting it, but then I realized just not to make it in those types of situations, unless it was my only option, and just to play more conservatively. But Emerald's still a great option. You have a single copy of Diamond Direwolf. It's just a great card to, get rid of whatever threats you see on the field. Single copy of Rongo Midiad. A lot of people have dropped this card, but I still like it. If you guys don't know what it does, it requires 2 or more level 4 warrior type monsters. Tellarknights are of course warrior types. And what it does is it gains effects based on the number of materials you use for it, because it takes 2 or more. And then during each of your opponent's end phases, detach an Exceed material. So with 1 Exceed material, it can't be destroyed in battle. With 2 or more, it gains 1500 attack and defense. With 3 or more, it's unaffected by other card effects. Towers. When there's 4 or more, your opponent cannot special summon or normal summon monsters. When there's 5 or more, once per turn, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. So this card is just amazing. If you get it up to that 4 or more materials, you basically lock your opponent out of their next turn, other than setting spell or trap cards. They can't pendulum summon. You basically stop them from making any power plays. Just a great card in general, honestly. Then we have a single copy of Traptrix Rafflesia, I believe it's pronounced. A lot of people have been debating over whether this card is worth putting into the extra deck, but I personally love this card. It came out in Breakers of Shadow. If you guys don't know what it does, it is unaffected by trap effects while it has Exceed material, so that's a great thing because they can't fiendish shit, whatever it may be. And then Traptrix monsters, blah blah blah, can't be destroyed by battle card effects. That's pretty insignificant. Your opponent cannot target Traptrix monsters, insignificant. And then the big one, once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach an Exceed material and send 1 normal whole trap card that meets its activation conditions from your deck to the graveyard, and this effect becomes that trap card's effect. So it's a quick effect that basically becomes whichever trap hole that can activate at the time. So when your opponent pendulum summons and you have Rafflesia, just send time space trap hole and you basically use the time space trap hole. It's just quicker access to your trap cards basically. So I just think it's a great card, defensive card to have against your opponent. 2500 defense is valuable. Then we're moving on to the 3 Ptolemaios Nova, my bad, Infinity. Of course, Ptolemaios, if you don't know, basically makes Infinity because you make it with 3 Tellarknights, or you attach 1 in the end phase, and then it lets you rank up by detaching 3 into a level 5, or rank 5. And then you rank up into Nova, which lets you rank up into Infinity. Which Infinity is, of course, a great, amazing card that came out in Bosch. It allows you to negate pretty much anything once per turn, and it allows you to pretty much use spot removal against your opponent's monsters by attaching it to this. Don't know what else to say, just a great trio of cards. It does use up a bit of extra deck space, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. We have a single copy of Constellar Pleiades. Now that we're playing Ptolemaios, you may as well have another option. If you can't go into Nova or Infinity, and Pleiades is just a great option there. Then we're playing the single copy of Seraphinite off of Brilliant Fusion. Lets you normal summon again. Just a great card. Then we have Norden for Insta Fusion. Don't really know what else to say about that other than it gets your rank 4s, or it gets your level 4s, and it allows you to make any or whichever card in your extra deck you feel like you need most. So yeah, that pretty much does it for this deck profile. If you guys need a side deck, I really don't know what to say to you, because that really depends on what type of people or decks you're playing at your locals, regionals, whatever it may be. That will need to be adjusted, you know, depending on what you're playing against. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. I know it's on DN and not like in real life, but I don't know. Like, I don't have these cards in real life, and I'd rather give you this on Dueling Network and not in real life than rather not at all. So yeah, let me know what you guys would like me to do in the future. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, peace, guys.